Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of the day, depending where you are. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and probably the most active large-scale Scrum community. Today we have two special guests. I'm going to introduce them to the crowd. First is Alexei Krivitsky. He's the certified Scrum trainer and certified enterprise coach. Who has been working in the industry for many years as an organizational agility coach. Alexei is also at heart a developer, has done work as a Scrum Master, and also he's known for being an active conference producer and speaker, and also he's a guitar player. He is also the author of one of the most popular Scrum educational artifacts. It's a simulation game called Lego for Scrum. And yes, and he's a wingman. His co-pilot is Roland Flemm, who is also a professional Scrum trainer, another very highly accredited title, if you will, someone who can educate and teach Scrum at high industry standard. A little bit about Roland. He became a Scrum Master back in 2009, so he's got almost 20 years under his belt. 20 plus years as a developer and infrastructure specialist. He's an international speaker, Agile consultant, and he's focused on large-scale Scrum adoptions, and he's been doing this since 2015. Again, in the Agile community, he's a very active conference speaker and also a creator of Koos Coach Agile comic series, something that you may want to look up online, as well as the creator of Elements of Scrum cards, which is something you also probably can Google. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to these two gentlemen. Mike kind asked everyone to keep your cameras on, mics off, chat in the window if you would like, and hold your questions until the speakers let you speak. Thank you very much. Alex,
all right.
Take it away.
Thank you, Gene, for this warm welcome, and we welcome everybody to this an hour on Topologies. Yeah, so we are speaking at a LESS meetup, and you would wonder why Topologies is here. So hopefully by the end of this hour, you'll be able to see how less friendly this tool is. So we both are LESS practitioners, and we basically started this work to help people have maybe another door to LESS, right? So one obvious door to LESS is the less.works website and all the books about LESS. For some people, LESS sounds a little bit maybe too extreme and maybe too scary, or the bar is too high for them yet. So we were trying to create this tool, which is called Topologies mapping, to help organizations see where they are and progress to the perfection state, which to us is very much equal to LESS's perfection vision.
Yeah, but while we were investigating or creating this work, we also saw it like a discovery, and we discovered more ways to create high adaptivity. But again, we stand on the shoulders of giants. What we've got comes from LESS, and we start expanding it and try to make more people aware of, the beauty that LESS-like implementations give you.
So we are happy to bring this back to the LESS family and give you this wonderful tool that we believe can help you also within your existing running LESS adoptions. Yep. So the headline is thoughtful organizational development. That is what we are trying to create or help create with Topologies. So we're gonna to tell you some stories of organizations along their development pathway, and not because you don't know how organizations develop. We believe you know that you are pretty much advanced community, but we need some storylines to be able to demonstrate to you the power of the Topologies mapping. Okay, and so we're gonna start with the start, where every organization that we know of started a long time ago being a startup. right? And well, we're gonna
Let's
pick.
take one of the famous ones.
Yeah, so that's the one you can find online, and if you didn't know, that's Microsoft 1978. So we're not going to talk about Microsoft, but we're gonna talk about a startup as something that has very interesting cultural and behavioral aspects to it. This is actually the Topologies map with a lot of details hidden, but essentially we would put a startup somewhere up here on the map, because if you think about a functional, well-running startup, that's basically a small crowd of people who are putting together all the skills and knowledge to create something they're passionate about. So by definition, it's a multi-skill or cross-functional work. But because they will be learning a lot during this endeavor, right? They will probably need to learn a lot of new things. So we put them actually in a multi-learning vertical, and horizontally, and vertically, they also, pretty high on the map. They're high on the map where scope of work is written on this vertical axis, because, well, they care about the whole thing. They care about the whole business, or they care about the whole product, whatever you would define it. So for us, this ideal startup, it's a team, and here teams equal a company, and a company equals a team. And this one team company, it's the most adaptive archetype you can find, because everybody is learning and everybody is gelled together by this, broad understanding of the work and ownership of the work.
Yeah, and I want to add that if you would see this at scale, then just guess where you would put less on this map.
Yeah, so we will come back to this point at the Topologies map later on, but now we like to explore what happens when the company grows and starts to scale. So we're not talking about Microsoft, of course. We're just talking about any company. And it's not a law, but typically what happens with the company is that it grows into the direction of looking, something like that. You would have some kind of boxes, divisions, departments, silos that we call them in Agile. And we know that you know that. But we know this. We need this story to be able to show you how you can map that on our Topologies map. So this can be an org chart of that scale-up company now, 5 years later. And interestingly, how those departments came to being. Well, imagine you hired 5 years ago the best developer who was the first hire at a startup, right? And then at some point you were so successful and there was so much demand on development, maybe on backend development especially, that you hired 20 more backend developers. And where do you put those developers? Where, I guess, for them to be able to be onboarded and learn, you put them in one part of your office space. And of course, that is developer.
Yeah, it's a natural thing to do, right? Yeah. You just put those people together and they form a group of people sharing the same knowledge, and they teach each other.
Yeah. It's a nice thing to do. You want to put people together where they feel belonging, right? So they can have their backend discussions and discuss the last backend conference, the last backend book they've read or attended. And that first developer who was there 5 years ago, he's now ahead of that backend department. It doesn't have to be this way for every organization, but we've seen quite a lot of organizations.
You see it. You see it happening all the time. You
see happening that all the time. It doesn't have to be this way. Like if you take Spotify, or maybe Miro, or maybe other cool companies, or Facebook, they didn't grow into departments. They were able to kind of sustain their what we call high level archetype, high adaptivity and high customer focus. But for a lot of companies, they would typically go down this path. And now,
and note also that business is separated from IT. It's also a classic thing that we do, and I still see it a lot in many companies where I go. So is this unthoughtful design? Maybe it's just organic and it just happens if you don't think too much about it. So we could call this unthoughtful. On the other hand, it might be that other things that were important needed to be taken into account. Maybe manageability, or being able to have knowledge clusters to be able to get people to collaborate in a certain way that we thought was good, or that we have learned from before in different organizations where we worked. So it could be unthoughtful. It could all be also on purpose, but maybe adaptivity wasn't the first thing that came to mind to organize ourselves this way.
Yeah, so now we're looking at the whole Topologies map, and which is basically a 4x4 matrix, a simplified view, of course, on the org design and org development. But it gives us these 16 distinctive archetypes that you can analyze, you can learn, and they become your language. So now you can say, oh, my company is somewhere in a Y0, Y1 box. And for me and Roland, and for everybody who knows and understand this language, which is not that hard to learn, that would mean, well, you probably have single individuals working together, or maybe you have a functional unit organization, like similar to this org chart on the picture. You don't have any cross-functional units yet. And why is it least adaptive archetype? Well, because somebody will have to understand actually the work. These people don't understand the customer. They don't speak customer language. They speak the technological skill-based language. So there should be somebody in the company who would understand, talk to the customer, and who would build some roadmaps and chunk that work, and basically, give that work to these low-level archetypes.
So and remember what we said with perfection of adaptivity, being able to work on what's most important and switch direction whenever we want. So this is not very adaptive if you have all these individuals working on tasks. To be able to just switch direction, because the direction switch will be at customer level. It will be a customer need that we see that we want to fulfill.
Yeah.
So it's much more difficult to be adaptive.
And if this company learns over the course of a development that actually customers need something else, or the market demand changes, well, in order to change, in order to steer in another direction, they will need to replan all those roadmaps and all those projects, and make sure the people in those departments and those cells actually understand this new work, which will, of course, take some time. That's why we call this a non-super adaptive archetype. Although it's not good or bad. We're not saying something is better or worse than the other. It just depends on what you need, right? Yeah. If you're building, I don't know, some semi-automated pipelines, you're working on a conveyor belt, you're assembling cars, probably it's totally all right to have these low-level archetypes. But if you are in a complex domain of product development, digital product development, then I guess you are discovering new things every day that you have not been aware before. And for that, adaptivity might be something you actually would need to survive and to stay relevant.
But that's a good point. It might be something that you need to stay relevant, and that need for many companies over the last few years has become much more apparent and much more real. 15, 20 years ago, the market wasn't saturated with all these new startups and new people eating away, cannibalizing markets. So now the need for change, we all know that, has grown bigger. So maybe that also requires, organizing ourselves differently to be able to meet those new changes that coming towards us.
And in a large company, and we know this question would come up, you will have different archetypes. You can have all of them in your large company, all 16 ones, right? But we will help you to understand the key boxes on the map, so you'll be able to know and understand this language of topologies. So what actually has happened with this company, where a startup, which was a very adaptive, holistically managed organization, what happened over time where it became this slow dinosaur, which is actually very big, and it takes a while for it to change the direction? Well, we find this very nice model online, which is called 6 Enablers of Business Agility. You might be able to look it up. So they basically say well, there are these 6 different things in an organization, 6 enablers, they call them. They all reinforce each other, and they all actually need to be worked on when you would like to thoughtfully change your organization. So, of course, over the course of 5 years, this company had hired new management, that is able to deal with this low-level archetype workers, right? A lot of middle management, I guess. So it's as a circle of leadership and management had changed. Well, maybe the founder had left the company already because he loved being in a startup and he hated being in this big organization. Might happened. Well, culture is very much different. If before people were able and willing to learn and discover new things, now they are expecting maybe for somebody to give them shovel ready, specifications to work on.
Yeah,
Of course,
and the rewarding structure will have been changed accordingly. To have, for instance, specialists wanting to develop themselves to become senior specialists and to grow in their deep skill expertise. So all these elements that are there are formed to make up the company the way it is now. And if this company wants to move back to become more adaptive, wants to move up on our map, then it will not be enough to just focus on one of these.
And typically this would be the ways of working. We say Agile is a way of working.
Exactly.
You can just, it's very naive to believe that you can just change one of these 6 circles that actually all reinforce each other, and bam, the company is now agile, adaptive, and funky again. No, it is not going to happen unless it's a super small company of maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 people. But if there are more people in the company, you actually need to change back, all the 6 dials. That's why we believe a lot of agile, so-called agile transformation fail, because they focus just only on way of working. Hey, let's put stickies on the wall and let's do stand-ups. Ooh, not enough. But we know that you all know that. So this is not the focus of our talk. The focus of our talk are these orange slides that we're gonna sneak from time to time to kind of make a debrief of what we've just discussed and how it is reinforced or enabled by the org topologies.
Yeah, so if you understand the language of org topologies and you have an idea of the main archetypes, or of all 16 archetypes, then you can plot yourself on the map and go like, oh, wait a minute, my organization or my team or my department or my group sits somewhere over here. And hey, actually, there's a lot of downsides of being here, a lot of problems that I have. I'm not very good at delivering value, and I would like to improve that. Well, then you can see the options, looking at the map, maybe plot yourself in a higher quadrant, and then think about all these changes that are required to go there. Again, taking into account these enablers, these different areas that you would need to work on to make such a move.
Yeah, so this tool gives us a language. Now, Roland can call me and say, hey, I've just spoken to this customer and there are A2 organization and they want to make a move to C3.
And then
I actually more or less know what he means by that. It is fantastic. We're actually now asking each other, how had we lived before org topologies? How did we communicate to each other this level of complexity?
Well, especially when I'm teaching in the class. So it's, it makes things much easier. Instead of talking about all kinds of frameworks, we can be more generic and we can be more agnostic, explaining constructs in organizations.
So let's develop this language further for you and with you. So this Y1 archetype, right? Typically, it's a functional unit that has a very narrow understanding of job, which is these are people typically having a task focus, right? So any department on this picture, front end department FE, backend department BE, DB or QA department, they can be represented by these Y1 archetypes. So this company has, we can say, 3 1 1 Y1 archetypes, but they don't actually, as we said before, they don't know the customer, they don't talk to the customer, they kept busy doing their tasks. That's why we actually put them at a Y1 level, right? So there are other units, other people in the organization who actually need it to serve these people.
Yeah, and
Right?
then in
And
C1, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the C1 will be the business part, the product managers who hear requirements from the customer, new needs, new possibilities they hear about, and they want to pass that on to IT. And that will go through some kind of middle person from the business, maybe a business analyst, that will be able to translate those requirements that they have and map them into the tasks that all the separate teams will need.
right.
So that this gives you an ecosystem of elements collaborating together in order to deliver value.
Yeah, and of course you can say, well, that business analyst needs to be higher on the map than those functional groups, because at least this person needs to understand customer features.
Yes.
And the customer features will be the second vertical on the map. So A0 will typically represent a single skill individual, business analyst, for example, or a team level product owner, right? In nonetheless adoption, where that a person actually understands very well features and now can communicate in the form of tasks this to the teams. So again, an orange slide, we are able to map not only individual archetypes, but we are able with topologies. And actually, this took us a year of discovery with Roland. So we are actually trying to save you time now in this 50 minutes. We can actually map what we call ecosystems. We map relationships between those archetypes because they don't exist in a vacuum. They need each other.
Yes. So maybe skip to the next slide and have a look on what we can do with the map even more. We
Yeah.
can start thinking of, oh, wait a minute, there's this change going on. There's people from the Y1 group, the backenders and the QAs maybe, who need each other all the time, that are being put into more or less teams to collaborate closer together, because that will speed up the delivery of new features or new value that they need to make. Except for maybe the front end team, they left them behind in the Y1 because they're a scarce resource and they don't need to be, there's no front end changes all the time. You know how things go in reality. And this is another move, a change going up. Wow, this is getting interesting now, because we could call this is the introduction of the Agile team.
Yeah.
Yay!
This is our first. This is our first agile friendly archetype.
Yeah.
Because actually, this is a cross-functional team. We call it a multi-skill unit, which actually understands features, and you can give them like a specification or a feature request, or maybe a small problem as an input.
And I really like this movement, because the magic is now we have a bigger brain. The brains used to be individuals, and now we create this bigger brain of a group of people that collaborate together to try to achieve some value.
Yeah. And now as a manager, you don't need to micromanage them given the task. You don't even need to know what's in that black box for you. You just care actually to other working on their most important work. So your goal as a manager now becomes to prioritize. That's where the Scrum introduces the idea of a product owner, right? Which makes sense only, at least at this level. Product ownership doesn't make sense at the previous levels. It makes sense only here.
But there's this relationship of the business analyst with that new team. So we need to be conscious about this. If we create this agile team with a product owner, then there will be friction with that analyst. What am I going to do if the product owner is going to think in features? You know, I was doing the breakdown here, so a logical move would be maybe that business analyst would just join the team, you know, and then we can be more complete as a group and have more knowledge about this business domain. And then this product owner that used to maybe just work as a proxy can now do more sensible things. So these moves are moves that you might recognize of what we've been doing over the past few years with teams.
Yes, and this will be a typical role of a Scrum Master, you know, to grow the teams, you know, from left to right. You would make sure your teams are getting more and more cross-functionality going, they are improving. And well, of course, it's an oversimplification to say that there are only 4 levels of cross-functionality, but we need to limit the map at some extent. So we're giving you these 4 kind of semi-artificial, you know, lines. And in this slide, you know, team went from being cross-functional, from being multi-learning, which means they don't just do what they know, they can also learn and acquire new skills.
Yeah, I want to make a remark though, because we're looking at 16 boxes, archetypes, organizational elements. No, you can just stay on the previous slide for a second. What's important if we move, if the team or the group moves from one box to another, it's not just about the archetype that you see, the organizational unit, but also be aware that you're crossing a line. You're crossing a line, which means that there is something happening in the organization, an epiphany, an understanding that has come to become reality for everybody. For instance, oh, wait a minute, people put in a team and to let them learn and collaborate is better for the organization. Let's do more of that. But crossing that line of going from single individuals and maybe going for a resource optimization towards, no, let's have learning teams. I mean, that requires a lot of steps, a lot of paradigm shifts. Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
and
so
then we can look at the 16 archetypes.
Yeah. It's just because we don't have that much time. We typically, we need a bit more time to go into those details that we're actually trying to give you in this 50 minutes. Essentially, you have the map, right? And we typically say, look at these 7 archetypes if 16 are too many for you, because typically these 7 archetypes are the ones that do the work in the company. So we've discussed already these low-level archetypes with you, either functional groups or somewhat more cross-functional teams. And of course, there's another part of the board that we haven't touched yet. But for now, the orange summary. And I know that orange is good for your appetite, and because it's lunchtime in New York, I guess guys are okay. So yeah, what org topologies are good at, it is an interesting, useful language we find that you can identify easily your archetypes. So it took us typically 10, 12, 20 minutes in our classes and workshops where before we give the first assignment, hey, could you guys look at the map and discuss where you are? And can you recognize any of your teams being in one of these boxes? And typically people very easily can do that, right? The next thing you can do with org topologies map, now you can visualize your transformation steps. You can say, hey, currently we are here, but when we grow up, right, we want to be somewhere there. And then you can say, okay, well, if we are making this move, or if we're about to make this move, okay, what does it take, right? And then you can pull out those 6 enablers of business agility and think, okay, what do we need to change in HR policies? What do we need to change in hiring? What do we need to change in management and leadership? So these org topologies maps can serve you as maps, I guess, on your journey, which help you to understand better your direction and then communicate it better. And the last point on the slide is owning your change. It's not a secret that a lot of agile, or in general, org change transformations fail because people don't own the change. Somebody just showed them, a slide deck, or somebody told them they need to change. Well, typically that doesn't end well. In this case, you can have, you can run a collaborative workshop and make your people discover where they are and discover what that means to them, and then discover where they want to go, and then you will have a much more interesting discussion. So let's move on. Roland.
Yeah, back in the days when Agile was introduced up until now in many companies, we've been mainly focusing on improving the teams, making the teams faster, creating teams, and then making them faster. And that was the first Agile wave. So if we are suggesting that this is the first Agile wave, then there has to be a second Agile wave too, and probably in that uncharted territory above. The higher archetypes, we call them. So most adaptive archetype in the upper right corner is C3. There's multi-learning units. They keep on learning new things, and they work as one big team and collaborate together on common goals that are closely related to customer problems.
Yeah, and because we're speaking, And because we're speaking in a less community, and probably you might have attended or you will be attending Craig Alarman's course soon, he typically explained this as a metaphor. He says the bird of adaptivity has two wings, and one wing, he says, is the wing of low transaction cost. And transaction cost and lowering transaction cost is a move on the map from left to right.
Yes.
You know, we believe when you put multi-skill individuals together and they start collaborating and learning, then of course you will minimize handoffs and waiting inside the team. And then of course your transaction costs will go down. It will be easier and cheaper, you know, to put stuff to production not once a month, but maybe multiple times a day with continuous delivery. And the second win is the low switching cost.
Yeah, like we said already, if the people that work on tasks, their scope, their understanding is very limited, then it's more difficult to change direction compared to people really understanding the customer domain and the customer needs. Mm-hmm. So it would be cheaper to change direction if people know more and collaborate more on the product level instead of on a simple small task level.
Yeah, so we have this secret agenda with Roland by introducing org topologies. Of course, we want to make a lot of money with org topologies and writing a book.
Don't say that.
But the secret agenda is that we actually would like to inspire more changes, more real agile transformation that would actually help companies and help you create those wonderful high-level archetypes. And because the first wave of agile was focusing too much on the teams and making more agile teams, the second wave, of course, will be about creating this broader ownership. And LESS is a perfect example and a perfect, you know, set of principles and frameworks how to go about it. And this is how it will look like, you know, just the same people who were in Y0, Y1, A1, A2 boxes maybe a year ago. Yeah. And these are the same people who now are given different constraints, different environment, and now they are just talking to each other, working together, trying to learn, discover, and own a broader set of problems. Maybe it's still not C3 level of the map. Maybe they're still not able to own and learn across the entire product. Maybe the product is huge, right? Like in a less huge adoption, but at least these are not feature-focused teams. There will be no search feature who is just polishing search functionality on the website forever, you know, pulling work from a search backlog being prioritized by the search product owner. These people are learning different things, and hopefully, well, if there's no work from the customer perspective that needs to be done in search, well, hopefully nobody's working on the search these days, but everybody are learning AI, for example.
Yeah, and maybe these pictures are familiar to you because you have been doing less adoption, or you were at a company where they were doing less. And if you're unfamiliar with them, it's all about collaborating, more people collaborating on working on the same goal. Yeah, so we create a space for collaboration with these groups instead of the separate teams with the separate backlog, the separate product owner, which was creating a fence and a wall around each team, making it harder for the teams to collaborate and deliver higher value, higher being closer to the real customer need. The idea of having groups together to tightly collaborate is why do we want groups? Well, it's also a matter of size. If the company is so big, then you will go overboard at a certain point with too many people collaborating, and therefore it might make sense to look at how you can split that organization into groups. That would be referring to the B level, working on product parts. Now, these product parts, they should have profit and loss responsibility. Otherwise, it's not a real product, right? So they would be collaborating on a product part that would be pretty much isolated dependency-wise from other product parts. Well, there's a lot of benefits for doing this. You can work together in a single sprint And then the people who work in a single sprint will have it will be much easier for them to collaborate when they refine the work together and when they do the review together, and during the sprint they will know who's doing what and share a common goal. They will work on problems synchronously instead of asynchronously if you would be working with separate agile teams.
Right. So the idea is to actually create this team of teams, if you will. And depending how difficult is the product, how huge is the product, they will own either a part of it or the whole one. And on the left side, you can see we've listed different probably known practices to you that are there on the market to basically try to help to create this high level archetypes. If you haven't heard about FAST, which is a fluid scaling technology, this is a new method on the rise, which is suitable, we believe, for small scale organization, for a, say, a business unit of maybe 50, 60, 70 developers inside. You can use this fast approach to actually create one team. They call it collective in the language of fast, and actually work together in a more Kanban style. But of course, we are at a less meetup, so we would want you to discover your way.
No, but it's
of
good.
doing
It's
that.
good. It's good to point it out. There's also other things happening around, collaborating as a collective or as a group
Yeah.
on in the product domain, in the higher levels of our map.
And our humble prediction is there will be more and more this method out there on the market, which actually you will be creating based on your experiments in your companies, that eventually you will publish as some methods or some guides or some case studies, experience reports, where you will find your way how to create this higher level archetypes. Interestingly, we still believe there will be a lot of challenges how to create them, and we can go and go on and on about them. This is a list of things which is there that we know of with Roland that actually stops and blocks the companies at this low level archetypes.
I mean, it's not people. If you explain that the whole product focus is a sensible thing to do, people won't argue with you. They'll say, "Yeah, of course, it's a good idea," but it's not. It's impossible. Is the answer. And the reason why it's impossible, well, they're, as Alexei already said, listed on the left, and they're enormous. That list is so long. Existing archetypes, existing configurations of organizational design are sticky, is what we call them. And they're sticky because of lots of reasons. Like, what's going to happen to my job if we're going to consolidate product backlogs? Then I'm going to be out of a job if I'm a product owner of a lower archetype team.
Yeah.
So,
and who most of you who has been through less adoptions or some other adoptions towards the higher archetype, those people are still very much needed. You still need product managers, you still need analysts, you still need designers. They just need to find maybe different way how to do things, but essentially you will need almost everybody except maybe for people who used to carry work between individuals. That's basically the only thing that really changes. Now we want those individuals to be able to coordinate among themselves. But there's a lot of confusion still on the market, and it will be. That's why these meetups and less community is there to actually help us understand how to deal with this, arguments that people have. Going back to where we started, well, if the move down from a startup to a scale up was scaling, well, the move up will be logically called descaling. And on the left side, we quoted this Freddie Mercury's and Queen's song, which you know of.
But of course, this
is going to, which we're not going to sing, Roland, please.
No, we're not going to do that. We as failed musicians, we're not going to do that. But this is a little bit confusing, right? And it's also funny, I think, to think, when you think about it, that actually what we're trying to do now, moving up to these higher archetypes, it's not scaling anymore. It's really descaling. It's consolidating, making things smarter, more product-oriented, productizing your company.
Yeah, people. So I'm looking at the chat. Let's spend 5 seconds, Roland, just going through what's happening there. Are people throwing tomatoes at us?
No, not really. No, we're doing fine.
No. I'm just. But there's a question: what level do you achieve with safe?
And the answer is.
This is exactly what we're going to show you next on the slides. So stay with us for the next 10 minutes. Please don't go anywhere. Yeah.
And folks, there are a few very pressing questions there, so
Yeah.
don't forget those. Yeah.
What was the pressing question?
Could
No,
you
there's
name them?
some folks
Yeah.
in the chat. Just take one at a time.
Okay.
Can I pick one that I just like?
Yes.
Can we go to the safe one first that
Yeah,
we've picked
do that.
already? Okay, please. So the summary of what we've been talking about for now, right? Okay, so this is a visual language to communicate org change or org development direction. And well, we had to limit ourselves with 2 dimensions because we cannot draw 3-dimensional things in PowerPoint yet. That's why we picked these 2 dimensions with Roland, which we believe are key contributors to improving your organization. So now, what you can do with that? Well, as we've already stated, step 1 is you can assess your status quo. You can assess where you are. And of course, it will be not just one dot, it will be an ecosystem of multiple archetypes collaborating. Secondly, you can discuss your status. You can discuss your target state, right? Your dream, where you want to be. Maybe you will maybe there will be multiple stops on the journey. By the way, you don't need to go from a box to box to reach your high level. Less adoption is typically a flip, a jump, a leap from low level archetypes right into C3, a product group, for example, right? And then once you know where you are and where you want to go, now you can work with the whole system. And this language is very specific, right? You can be really specific with org topologies, and you can be actually painfully specific with that.
Hey,
So
they're safe.
somebody might ask us, hey, what if we do safe? Where would you put us on the map? Before we show the next slide, could you guys put in the chat where you think the safe adoptions you heard of, you're part of, falling in? We're not going to make any bashing jokes about safe or anything, just for the record, where you think they are.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you where we think.
So Jeff says A2 or B2. Now, archetype or let's say organizations that have B2 archetypes, in B, there's this team of teams collaborating. And collaborating is not just aligning. And I have not yet seen, but maybe you have, agile release trains where people were really deeply collaborating, sharing code repositories, pair programming, all of that, where teams really were doing more than just doing PI. Sorry?
I'm working in one.
All right.
This is amazing.
As an RT. Yes.
Yeah. We would love actually to talk to you and to learn more from you, because so far for the last year and a half, this is our analysis.
And we had it a little bit in B as well. And then people started arguing with us that was wrong, right? So we would definitely be interested in hearing your experience on this, so we can.
But also, like, don't start arguing yet or saying that we are, minimizing, diminishing your achievements, because, well, in our experience, people typically would put themselves a bit higher than they are. And we also actually didn't have a lot of time to explain the B level and the C level. But very briefly, at a B level, well, you will not have a search team or a mobile team. You will have a team of teams that work together, that share basically one backlog or one queue of work, and they will all be able to learn to work on the highest value. And if, is it Java, if you have been able to achieve that with SAFe, this is fantastic. You need to write about it, please. The industry needs to learn your practices, because sadly, the SAFe adoptions I have heard of, not able to go that far. So maybe you have discovered something really cool that you need to contribute. And I'm not just, exaggerating.
It's not me. It's the guys working in the art. So it's really not.
But the point is, it doesn't really matter what the SAFe is. Yes, that is the point. What matters is where you are. And maybe you are here. So when somebody tells me these days, oh, we're doing SAFe or something else, doesn't tell me a lot of information. Actually, it never told me, but now I understand why. Because they might be different, constellations of teams. Maybe they have suffering component teams with a lot of dependencies, and the only thing they do is they identify and try to manage those dependencies from the outside of the teams. Or maybe they have pretty cool, feature like teams, like in less that, but then maybe they have simplified safe to something very unique and special. But so it doesn't really matter where we put safe. It's important where you put yourself in, because it's a more specific language. And then again, you can discuss where you want to be and where the change takes you. And we typically say we are framework agnostic, and we are not trying, to bash any frameworks and stuff. We say frameworks are tools, vehicles, which typically organizations use to go from A to B. Sadly, because of ignorance or lack of education, sometimes framework substitutes this journey and becomes the goal. The goal of this agile transformation is to adopt X. No, the goal is not to. The goal is to go from A to B, and this X is maybe helping us, or maybe not. We should ditch it and find something else.
Hey, and maybe before the safe adoption, this company took a year to deliver some kind of value, and after the safe adoption, they do things in 3 months, they deliver value. So that's a huge achievement. But like Alexei says, the framework thinking of now we're safe and we're going to stay doing safe for the rest of our lives, that's a pity. It's a continuous journey, and we hope that people will become more aware of this. For instance, by using this language of org topologies to understand what could the next step be for one of those agile release trains and move more towards the B archetype.
Yeah, so our second secret agenda item is to help our industry break out from this framework thinking, right? Another thing that is out there, which is team topologies, but we're not giving you the answer. I'm gonna skip the next slide. So you guys go to our blog and you read our analysis of team topologies. I'm gonna be
cliffhanger.
I'm gonna be evil today. So what needs to change? We actually analyze team topologies, the Spotify model, Marty Kagan empowered product teams, and we spend a lot of time writing and talking to different people. So please go to our blog at orgtopologies.com, and if you're interested in our analysis, please read. And if you don't agree, then please join our Slack channel, which is also referred to from our website, and have a discussion with us. So
remember what needs to change. Remember that we started with this model, the enablers for business agility. In all these areas, things will need to change, not just the way of working.
No. So if safe creates some positive structural change, cultural change, affects governance, removes the yearly budgeting cycle into something more lean friendly, it's fantastic. But it's not about safe, it's about you actually understanding what needs to change. And we believe this wonderful 4x4 map helps to have meaningful discussion. And if it doesn't, create your own metrics, whatever is out there that you can use to learn how to help your organization, make a thoughtful org development.
There's this question, Alexei, from Efe. Can this also work in a small size organization in manufacturing industry? I mean, not a typical software engineering company. I find that a little bit hard question because I really don't have any experience in manufacturing.
Well, I don't find it hard at all, because in manufacturing, you are not striving for adaptability, you are striving for efficiency. So you typically, I guess, will be in the lowest part of the map. Not because it's bad, because you're not interested to be super adaptive. You know what you're building, and you need to build 1 million units of this one thing. So
if that's what manufacturing is,
if that's manufacturing, that you don't need to go up there. Up there is, the extreme adaptivity that less and less like methods promise to us, but not every company needs to go there. But we also now have people reporting us cases where they use org topologies completely outside of IT. Like we have an experience report now from Michał from Poland, who is using that to help his HR department make some improvements.
Adam Parker responds to this question, depends on the type of manufacturing setup, because a job shop, I don't know what that is, might be in the top right quadrant.
Okay, so this is the discussion we want you to have with your people in your organizations. We're happy that you already taken on this language. So a bit of
mission completed.
yeah, a bit of advertisement maybe. We are running online self-paced course where you can learn much more about org topologies, and we are developing this method. So if you have been following our work for the last year, we are changing the maps, we're improving, we're trying to make them as simple as possible, and now we are going to put live this online course. It will be around 20 to 30 lessons, 3 to 4 hours of education. And surprise, surprise, you are already in that education, because we have just covered the first chapter with this hour of discussing with you org topology. So you are already learning with us. And if you would like to continue, that's the offer we have on the table for you. And we would love to have you in our cohort. And it's not just online on-demand education. These are also video calls with us where we will be able to discuss your cases and try to help you make your mappings and help you make sense out of your mapping and org topologies. Another last comment is that we teach Scrum and Agile with Roland because we are Scrum trainers. And now we actually not able to communicate about scaling without actually referring to org topologies. We really use it as a map to put all those ideas on the table and say, hey, this is good for this, that is good for that. And you can also join us to be our educators and consultants, and you'll be given tools and maps and support mentoring from us, Roland and myself, to be able to incorporate that into your daily practice as an educator and a consultant. And now I know how much time we have. We are running almost out of the time, but time for questions. Yeah.
We probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So folks, please fire it well.
Well, there was still one question on the naming, why we chose the naming the way we did it. While maybe if somebody else has a different question that they would like to ask, then please do. Otherwise, I will answer that one.
Just go.
Yep. So when we started off some time ago, let's say, I can't remember exactly, 1.5 or 2 years ago, we started off with not considering, only considering Agile teams. And everything outside. Oh, could you please leave the? Oh no, that's good. So we only had A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3 on the map. And actually, after a while of discovery, we started to see that it was important for people who are not doing Agile to also understand where they are. So we extended the map, but hey, we already had 5 followers, so we couldn't just, throw everything overboard and start new again. So we were stuck with our naming. And that's when we thought like, oh, wait a minute, but when you're born, right? What's your age? Your age is 0. Okay. And then when you turn 1, then you're 1. So before 1, we can have a 0. So that problem was solved. But then we still had the problem to solve what's below A. Well, there's nothing below A, right? And then we came up with the idea of maybe naming it X, but that didn't feel right. And then Y was actually much better, because Y was like, why are these people still there? So that's the reason why we have 0 and Y. And then later on, we started to discover that the A actually matches to Agile, and the B matches to business, and the C matches with customer. And that kind of represents also the movement of what we try to represent on the map. So that's the story behind the coding and boxes.
We'll take one more question.
Which is a very lame excuse.
Yes, definitely. Maybe switch to the next slide in the meanwhile, for people to copy the code or make
Thank you both so much. This is a really great introduction to org topologies.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I felt a little bit like the monkey behind you, Roland.
Why?
Yeah. Well, there's another request that we have. Please go to our website. On the homepage, you can download the primer, which is a PDF and contains a lot of the materials that we've been talking about today in the call too. So that would help you, and you can use it at work. Print it, share it with other people. So, and by doing this, you will get connected to us, because remember, we're updating this stuff super fast. I've learned, Alexi, to be the fastest shipper ever of stuff.
Maybe that's why I'm a failed musician, right?
Yeah, maybe. And as we speak, there is already new versions of the map that we're developing that we're almost ready to push out. So yeah, stay connected with us, download the map. Please feel free to use it. There was a question, can I use it for my next transformation? Yes, of course. That's why we make this.
You must use it. But if you do, we would love to hear from you. And we are actually celebrating people using our topologies, and we're giving out these champion badges who people who blog about it or who write experience reports. We believe this tool is so useful. We would like more people to use it. So if you have tried it, maybe you failed, maybe you made some success, please talk to us and we'll be happy to include you in our internal community of practitioners.
Folks, thank you very much. Alexi, Roland, I just want to give a shout out to both of you. Thank you very much for coming out and doing this for us. And I would like to thank everyone for joining. I know people are going to be dropping any second now, so probably want to wrap this up on a very good note. Once again, I will expect you to send me all the assets you have, and I will do the needed to syndicate this further, along with the recording that we shall be having sometime later this weekend, okay? So once again, thank you all for joining.
Thank you for having us. I hope you enjoyed the lunch.
Large-scale Scrum community and attending this event. Great turnout today. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of the Friday and your weekend.
Yes.
We are already almost in the weekend in Europe, but you're still lagging behind. A few hours to go. Please use them with care.